Andrew, are you saying that you were the straw that broke the camel's back with J.K. Rowling?
Not necessarily. I'm just saying that is the first public piece of evidence that something was wrong. That's all I'm saying. When there's history books on this, that tweet is going to be chapter 1, or maybe the foreword. Welcome to Millennial, the home of pretend adulting and real talk, but in a very mindful, demure type of manner. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
I think Pam gets that. Laura does not.
Nope.
Oh,
Laura,
you're not on the very mindful, very demure side of TikTok yet?
No, I don't think so, because those are not words that I would use to describe this show.
Spend an hour on TikTok tonight, and you'll run into the demure trend that's running rampant.
Yeah, we've moved on from Brad Summer, and now we're very mindful, very demure.
Oh,
Yes.
I see. See, somehow I've ended up on the side of TikTok that is shitting on Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively.
Not very demure.
Not very demure at all.
No, I've learned so much. Thank you, TikTok.
Well, we got a lot to talk about today, but first, I want to remind everybody that this year's Millennial IRL gift is here. It's the M Word Cloud t-shirt, and on this brand new shirt, the M of Millennial is formed using lots of different references to the show from over the years, like Andrew, Laura, Pam, Pals, Kamala, and dozens more, many going back years, as I mentioned last week. We are going to be handling the fulfillment process differently this year. Beginning in September, every Bay and higher patron will be receiving a unique redemption link. Then all you'll have to do is pick your shirt size, enter your address, and the shirt will be shipped to you. And if you are not a patron, it is not too late. Pledge by Saturday, September 6th at the Bay level or higher, and you'll receive your redemption link in about 3 months. And immediately, you'll get benefits like our monthly roll calls, variety shows, Zoom hangouts, a special hangout coming in about a week. Stay tuned, patrons. And you'll also get new After Darks, live streams, and ad-free Millennial. You can sign up for an annual subscription to save 10% too. Just visit patreon.com/millennial to get started. And your support keeps the show running. It is expensive and time-consuming to run a business and run this podcast. So we really appreciate your support because it helps us continue to do this podcast that we love to do every week. I mentioned After Dark. Laura, we had a bit of an inspirational After Dark last week, and
We did.
I remember you came into our recording studio, and you were like, oh, guys, I'm tired. It's been a day, this and that. But then, like, in After Dark, you just, like, nailed this response to one of our listeners. And I'm sitting here like, geez, if I were tired and exhausted, I would not be able to pull that off. So even at Laura's most tired, she's able to completely nail responses to listeners unprepared in real time.
You want to know the secret to that? I'm always my most tired. That is just my standard existence in this life. So I'm used to it.
I see.
But thank you.
Yeah, you're
because
welcome.
half the time I walk away from these things being like, did that make any sense?
Oh, yeah, that's me every moment of every episode. But so we got this email from a listener who listened to this After Dark. Would you like to read it?
So we got this from Mariann, who wrote in after listening to our latest After Dark, where we surprise bitched several of our patrons. This has been an ongoing series where we've resurrected the old surprise bitch segment, and we're using it as an opportunity to kind of call and interview our patrons. And by interview, I mean ask them like really weird, random probing questions to make them talk about themselves. But we spoke to someone named Ashley who talked about wanting to make some career changes, but not really knowing where to get started. And Mariann wrote in about that phone call, and she says, I'm listening to the latest Mega Millennial episode and just want to tell Ashley, please follow your dreams. I have just finished medical school at the age of 45, and I have 3 daughters. I live in Hungary, so tuition-free university was a huge perk, but what I found is that it's mostly a mind game. You have to believe you can do it. I had my highs and lows, but if you drag yourself through the tough times, you will look back and see what you've been able to do. Good luck to all the career changers out there. Also, I could hardly believe it when I heard it a few months earlier. I got my first degree from the same school as Laura, McDaniel College. What are the chances that as a Hungarian fan, I find you through Harry Potter and then this? Anyway, insert major fangirling here. I love you guys and thank you for everything. Mariann, that is so cool. So, fun fact about my undergraduate institution, McDaniel College, they have a sister campus in Hungary. So, there is McDaniel College Budapest.
That's so cool.
I will say that I never got a chance to go, but that was a really popular destination for a lot of people who wanted to study abroad. And there were often times where Hungarian students from the McDaniel Hungary campus would come over to the Westminster, Maryland campus for a semester, sometimes a year. Honestly, I bet Budapest is a way more interesting and beautiful city than Westminster, Maryland is. But Mariann, I'm super curious, were you at the Hungary campus or did you ever come over to the States? I would love to hear about that. And what a small world.
I know. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And thanks for those inspiring words too, Mariann. I thought we should include that in the main show because I think a lot of people need to hear something like that from time to time. And Riley, who's listening live right now, said, believing in yourself is the hard part. And yeah, I think we all feel that at some point.
Yep.
Well, I think listeners between now and November can expect us to be giving some sort of weekly political updates as we approach the 2024 election.
Sorry.
Well, the past 2 weeks have been pretty good news, but hopefully the good news trend will continue. I would classify this under good news. We're not going to spend as much time on Trump and Kamala this week, but their debate is on for Tuesday, September 10th. Trump had initially pulled out of appearing at this debate because he argued that he had agreed to debate Biden on September 10th. And now that Kamala Harris is in, that's not what he agreed to. But he has since backtracked and will now appear. And I'm sure it's going to be must-see TV. And maybe it's a sign of him realizing he's lost ground to Kamala. Like he actually has to show up now. He can't just sit this one out.
I think she memed him into submission too. He does not like to be made fun of. And I think he, to this point about you saying he realizes that he's lost maybe some ground, I think that he finally realized how many people were laughing at him and he didn't like that. And so he was like, fuck it, we'll do it.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think he would debate her if he didn't feel like he had to.
Yeah.
I think if he were still the clear runaway candidate, he wouldn't do it. The only reason he's doing it is because the polling is not looking great for him. Kamala has really tightened the odds in a lot of swing states, and certainly national averages are looking way more competitive now. If Biden were still a candidate, I don't think he'd go.
Yeah.
I don't think Trump would go.
Yeah. On a related note, starting next week and running for a few weeks, including up through the debate, we think presently, you can expect more laid-back episodes of Millennial as we kick into a summer series of more relaxed vibes. And the reason that I say that is because next week, Laura and I are actually going to be together in DC, and we're going to record something together in person. It'll be a smaller, more laid-back episode. The following week, I'll be off and Pam and Laura are going to do something. And then I think we're going to take Labor Day off. And then the week after that will be the debate. And I think we're going to do something, again, smaller that's focused on reacting to the debate. So you can expect 3 different types of episodes over the next month-ish here at Millennial. It's summer. It's better than us disappearing completely, right?
Should be fun.
Some podcasts just disappear and air reruns, but no.
Not us.
Laura and I will be getting together with a drink and talking shit in the hotel room like it's 2006.
Yeah, I mean, didn't we already establish that we're going to turn your room's bathtub into the liquor cooler? So we're going to chock it full of ice and full bottles of liquor, just like we did 20 years ago at the cons.
Right. I said, well, that's what Laura wanted me to do. And I said, no, that tub is reserved for my sex toys that I am bringing. I need to store them somewhere. By the way, did you all hear that the MTV VMAs were scheduled for September 10th? And then they said they're moving to September 11th to avoid the debate. And then people on Twitter were like, yes, September 11th, a date infamously that never has anything going on.
I know. I'm wondering if anyone was like, maybe do you want to switch that again?
Yeah, try one
there
more
might be
time.
Something else happening that day. National Day of Mourning. I don't know if...
September 11th. Okay, great idea, guys.
Yeah, I mean, maybe when there aren't so many people alive who remember 9/11, we can start getting more casual about award shows happening on that day.
Yeah, it's just funny to say, we're moving to September 11th to avoid a big news event. Like, okay. Also, just wanted to circle back to the Olympics really quick. Laura, it didn't sound like you were going to be watching much, but Pam, did you watch the Olympics a bunch?
I'm not one of those religious watchers, but I did tune in here and there, just basically to gymnastics and diving. And then what else did I watch? Those were the big ones. But yeah, I mean, like it was super fun, and the commentating was really good. Stephen Martha killed it with the equestrian stuff. That was really fun to watch. But it's like it almost felt like it went on for such a long time, and then also I can't believe it's done.
I know
it's really only 2.5 weeks.
Yeah,
but we all get so enthralled that it feels like it goes on for way longer.
Like most people, I mainly watched swimming and gymnastics. Those were a lot of fun to follow. America came out on top, baby. America, fuck yeah.
Not in shooting.
Oh, no?
No.
Which was ironic.
That is ironic.
Yeah.
126 medals for America. Tied with China for gold, 40 apiece. China came in second overall with 91, and Great Britain received 65 medals overall. I also just wanted to add that I watched the closing ceremonies, and as part of it, they hand off the flag to the next hosting city of the Summer Olympics. In this case, as we touched on a couple of weeks ago, that is Los Angeles. Tom Cruise jumps into the stadium. That part was okay. It wasn't I was expecting more from Tom Cruise. But then it cuts to this like transition where he motorcycles out of there and then he parachutes into Los Angeles. And I loved every second of this. They had some live performances happening in LA, including from Snoop Dogg, who was over in Paris. So it's hilarious that he like also showed up in LA. Billie Eilish too. And then Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I just thought it was so cool. The whole LA video. I just like, as somebody who loves California so much still, I had so much pride in my heart for that Los Angeles transition.
Yeah, it was really cool. I still don't know how LA is gonna be ready to host. I mean, obviously LA has star power. I think they really showed that off with the closing ceremony pass off, but
star power can't resolve traffic, which is
right, exactly.
Apparently they have a goal with the LA Olympics to not require any driving in your own car. Like you're going to be able to get everywhere where Olympics or events are held via public transit, which seems like a big goal.
Yeah,
in LA?
Yeah, the LA Metro has a TikTok account that got served up to me, and they're talking about like how amazing the public transportation already is in LA, and the comment section under that video is probably as roasty as you would expect.
Like they're going to be expanding some of the light rail lines, which they've been working on for a few years now. I think I read a report that the LA is already a little behind, but we were also calling this out a few weeks ago on Millennial. There's always these reports in the lead up to an Olympics that things are behind. Japan, Paris, wherever, everything's always behind, and it always works out. I think Paris went off pretty damn well, all things considered, except for that attack during the opening ceremonies in the transit lines.
That's true.
We have to wait probably a little longer to make sure that nobody got poisoned by swimming in the Seine.
Yes.
Oh, good point.
Yes.
We'll give it like a month and make sure nobody got like cholera or E. coli.
That's true.
Or whatever.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And then after this, Laura is going to talk about a major ruling against Google. We'll be right back.
Yeah, for this major ruling against Google. This is actually a really good thing to Google if you don't know a ton about what's going on. To be honest, I didn't entirely either. A federal judge ruled that Google actually violated antitrust law by spending billions of dollars to secure exclusive agreements with developers, carriers, and equipment makers to be the world's default search engine. And by doing so, it was argued that Google has created a monopoly. So this is bad news for Google. And what I find so interesting about this is, first of all, this case was brought by the Trump administration's Justice Department and is a perfect example of something that is applauded across the aisle by both parties, as a lot of politicians and a lot of people want to look to hold big tech accountable to things like antitrust laws and making sure those laws remain strong and durable in this space and kind of help set precedents for what big tech companies are going to be able to do in the future. To give y'all an idea of what this ruling means when it says that Google has a monopoly on search, Google controls 90% of the online search market and 95% of that market on smartphones. They also reportedly spent $26.3 billion in 2021 to maintain search engine dominance. So it is interesting to think about that because we all kind of think of Google. I mean, we don't think of it. We use Google as a verb, right? Just fucking Google it, we would say to each other if someone's talking about something we don't or they don't understand. And me being the other person doesn't want to take the time to like get into the nitty-gritty details. That is kind of how Google has socialized itself with people over the last 20, 30 years. So it's interesting to find ourselves here in this moment. And this does represent a pretty major setback for Google and its parent company, Alphabet Inc., which did steadfastly argue that Google's popularity stemmed from customers' overwhelming desire to use a search engine so good at what it does that it has become synonymous with looking things up online. But what this ruling is saying is that Google didn't naturally become synonymous with looking things up online. It was a very dedicated and strategic effort over the course of a couple of decades to really push anyone else out of developing in the search market of the internet, which is why you don't see any competitors to Google, which is another thing that this ruling argues. So I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on this. It's pretty big news in the world of tech regulations and potentially opens the door to some further legal activity here, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah, this is huge news. Google was saying in court, oh, we're not anti-competitive. We're just the best. Everybody just comes to us because we're the best. But anybody who has used Google in the last few years knows that Google is not great. You try to search for a cooking recipe and you click into an article and you got to scroll all the way past this personal story, air quotes, about a recipe before you actually get to the recipe. That's because Google takes word count into consideration. People keyword pack articles to try and get them to rank harder. There's all these tricks that publishers have learned to try and play Google. And as a result, articles and Google are just trash across the board. So Google is not the best experience. That said, is there like a clear leader compared to Google? I don't know, but it's definitely Google. Yeah, they're all kind of a mess. But yeah, Google is just the default. And one shocking stat that came out of this case is that Google pays Apple $20 billion a year to be the default on iOS. $20 billion a year to be the default search engine on iOS. And that is all profit for Apple. That is all profit. There's no expense there for Apple. They're just pocketing $20 billion a year because that's how important being the default search engine is on Apple devices to Google. And then they get a leg up against Bing and the other competitors, and all they have to do is hand over cash to Apple. And that is anti-competitive.
And it also behooves them because they're probably by default, because of the way Android is built, they're automatically the default over there too, right?
Yeah, it's a Google operating system.
So that's a monopoly for sure. They just have to pay one side. If I'm remembering back to like the first time I remember using Google, I think that at one point it was just based purely on the interface and the type of stuff that it would spit out at you. It was probably like the easier, best search engine to use at one time. But you're right, Andrew, over the years, as a result of their own greed and by their own making, it's kind of become a shithole too. But I do remember when Google started, becoming like the hot new search engine to use it. It was easier. You didn't have to go through so many steps to get what you wanted.
Yeah.
And if you're a student in school, like all that extra time is important. Like the less buttons you have to click, the less you have to learn an interface, the better. But obviously there's always been other search engines. I know we all grew up with like Ask Jeeves, and like Netscape Navigator also used to have a search option as well that was really rudimentary.
Yahooligans
Bing
was the kids version of Google, which felt cool.
Oh man, that takes me back to computer class.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can still see those computers in the class and just doing a search on Yahooligans and Ask Jeeves. It was so cool to talk. Ask Jeeves was like the original AI, even though it wasn't AI. It just felt like
because he had a cute little butler there.
Yeah, he's like, how can I help you?
Exactly.
And I'm like, Harry Potter books, release date.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately, this ruling calls out a number of things. It's like a 277-page ruling. I did not read the whole thing. Honestly, you can get the important parts just by looking at like Reuters or the Associated Press. But they call out things like the fact that Google knows that if they lost the Safari default on iPhone, it would result in a loss of billions of dollars. So that explains why they're willing to spend $20 billion a year for this, because they're profiting even more off of this move. They also call out, again, to Andrew's point, that the distribution agreements caused a third key anti-competitive effect in that they reduce the incentive to invest and innovate in search. So all of these other old search engines that we remember from when we were kids that don't exist anymore, there's a reason they don't exist, and it's because the market's been cornered.
Mm-hmm.
Google is Boardwalk and Park Place, basically.
And Google doesn't have to try and get better because they're not competing with anybody.
Right.
Exactly.
In this Apple-Google agreement, I heard last week that there's this other clause that says Apple actually can't turn Siri into a search engine because then Google would see that as competing against Google.
So when Siri says, this is what I found online, she's just redirecting you to Google.
Right. Here, I searched the web for you. Here's what I found on the web.
But I only searched Google.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Wink, wink.
Certainly Google is not the only major tech company that is facing lawsuits. I mean, Apple is another one. Apple is another great example of a company that has participated in anti-competitive efforts, which is something we chatted about, couple months ago on the show here. So there's definitely a theme coming out of Washington, and it's that this might be the one bipartisan issue that exists now. I mean, whether you're on the left or the right, everyone seems to agree that a lot of these big tech companies have too much power. They own too much of the market, and they're squashing out any attempts at small businesses to get up and running and try to compete, which both Merrick Garland and multiple Republicans on the other side of the aisle would promote as being a win for the American people and a win for competition and small business and ingenuity. So I tend to agree. I think Google really did step out of bounds here. Well, this ruling also paves the way for a trial on potential remedies to this antitrust issue, which also opens up the possibility of breaking up Google parent company Alphabet. So, for anyone who didn't know, yes, Google does have a parent company and they own lots of other tech companies, like over 200 of them. I was reading, it's crazy. But some of the big ones that you are definitely familiar with are things like YouTube, Android, Nest, Fitbit, Waze, DoubleClick, which is an advertising platform. And that's just to name a few of the things that they own across a variety of industries. I think Google might be getting themselves into a larger monopoly lawsuit over the next couple of years. It seems it just got me thinking and made me realize that I had no idea what all what all Alphabet owned, because they don't brand everything as a Google product. Like some of it is, like the Google Nest, for example, right? But there are a lot of these other products and services that don't necessarily have the Google brand attached to them, and that feels intentional.
Yeah. And they did buy a lot of these over the years, like YouTube,
Yeah.
they purchased, Fitbit, Waze, I believe DoubleClick they purchased too. Talking about a monopoly, if they're just buying up all these major companies and then becoming the dominant player in these spaces, that's a huge issue. I mean, I think looking at, with the exception of like YouTube is definitely dominant, but I think that one you can argue it is the best platform for videos.
Yes.
Like it just is.
Yeah. It's just funny because they didn't make it. They just saw something good that somebody else made and went out and bought it.
Yeah. But I will say that they need search. Search is their number one most successful product. They've tried many products over the years. In the tech community, Google is often criticized for launching new services, tools, products, and then shutting them down. An example in our world, actually, is they launched Google Podcasts, and this is a separate app, and you can subscribe to podcasts and all that. Well, it lasted a couple of years. They're shutting it down. Everyone remember Google Wave? Remember that was supposed to replace email? Everybody was so excited about it. Shut that down. These are just two examples, but there's many examples of Google.
What about Circles?
Circles, yeah, or Google Meetup or Google Hangouts on Air. That's how we used to podcast.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Shut that down.
And they just stopped supporting it.
They shut down Google Reader, their RSS reader, like a lot of stuff.
And stuff that we were all actually using.
Yeah. They also bought stuff that became obsolete. Like, speaking of stuff that people were using, Blogger was a really popular platform. Google bought that, incorporated it into their suite. I think you can technically still use it, but it's really become obsolete. So,
yeah. Google Glass. Remember Google Glass holes and all that?
Google Glass hole.
This whole ordeal is interesting because there was a time when the United States filed an antitrust suit against Microsoft, and Microsoft lost in 2001. And you might remember back in early 2000s, 90s, Microsoft was dominant. They were the big tech company. Like, they had the wind at their backs. They had nowhere to go but up. But then this happens, and that started their fall from grace. So the one reason this is such big news is this could maybe cause a seismic shift at Google. Things will change at Google, and we might look back in 20, 30 years and look at Google how we look at Microsoft now, or Ask Jeeves now. Another player could come up through all of this.
Yeah, and I think Google is feeling the heat on this. Their president of global affairs had this to say: this decision recognizes that Google offers the best search engine, but concludes that we shouldn't be allowed to make it easily available. So this is some like Trumpian spin, honestly.
Yeah.
On this ruling, because that's not at all what the ruling's saying.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly not what anyone who uses Google in 2024 is thinking, especially after y'all rolled out your half-baked AI beta that had no business being rolled out. But I think it's an interesting point that you raise, Andrew, about the possibility of seeing Google fade into obscurity and another search competitor rise up in its place. I'm wondering if y'all think that the government is equipped to keep up with regulating quickly evolving technology. I feel like that's always the question with rulings like this, because this took 2 years. Again, this was raised by the Trump administration's Justice Department. It took us 2 years to get here. In that time, how much has Google evolved? How much time has Google had to prepare for this eventuality? Surely they knew before this ruling came out the way it was going to go. I assume Google has very good lawyers who prepared them for this outcome. So it just makes me wonder, what is Google going to do in response to this to try and circumvent this ruling?
No, they can't keep up. Like, they're going to be so far behind on AI. They're probably never going to regulate it because it evolves so quickly. It's like, how can you even keep up?
Well, also judges can regulate it now. We don't actually need regulatory committees to do their jobs anymore.
But even so,
thank you, Supreme Court.
But even so, I mean,
sorry, I'm mad.
Judges are going to be out of touch with technology as well. And there's a lot of money in dominating these tech spaces, and they're going to try to stay ahead of, these older generations of people, to put it nicely, who just don't understand it all. So it's it's like whack-a-mole. It's going to be constant whack-a-mole.
I wonder if part of the hesitancy too, aside from lack of knowledge, is just like the fact that we don't really know what the trickle down effect will be. Like if you regulate one, you just by default end up regulating a lot more than that, because they all kind of run in the same business. A lot of these tech companies run similar schemes, even if their products are slightly different. So you don't necessarily want to like knock all the dominoes down by accident, but you have to start somewhere. Like you can't just let fear dictate that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there will definitely be legal precedents that come out of this and regulations that more broadly apply to the tech industry in general. But yeah, you're right, Pam. It's also too big to fail. So I don't think the government wants to push Google so far that they fail. I don't think they want to push Apple so far that they fail. So it's going to be a really interesting dance over the next couple of years. But yeah, I mean, looking back 10 years from now, I think is going to be really interesting, simply because I think Google has a bigger hold on a lot of our lives than we realize at the outset. Like, yeah, we all use Google search, but then we started thinking about what are the other Google products that we use, and we all have several.
Oh yeah, I mean, as much as I come across as an Apple fanboy, I use a lot of Google products in my day-to-day, hour-to-hour life, thinking of Gmail, Google Calendar, Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Spreadsheets, Google Voice. And I think one effect we might see of this lawsuit is that they might have to start putting more advertising into these other products, because if they are becoming less dependent on revenue from Google search because less people are potentially using it. Let's say if it's no longer the default on iOS, they're going to have to make up their money elsewhere. All of these products are great, but they don't make money like Google search does. So is Gmail going to become littered with ads, sort of like Google is now? Is Google Calendar? I mean, a lot of these products, if you think of them, Google Docs, you don't see a single ad in Google Docs. That could change.
No. I also kind of wonder if maybe they'll knock down like the amount of free space they give consumers
Yeah.
in an effort to force us to
Yeah.
pay, which like
Raise subscription costs too.
yeah, I mean it's incredible that the Google suite is free. You know, Google Docs,
For personal use.
Google Sheets, all that stuff. Right, exactly. But like for everything else like Microsoft, you have to pay for all that. And it's a monthly charge, as we've discussed before.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
can't just buy it outright anymore. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think of things like we have a Google Home and a Nest.
yeah. We
And
have a Google
I just
Mesh routers, which also goes into Google Home. So I feel you.
right. So it really does make you begin to wonder how these services might also change. I'm just imagining like, am I going to live in a world where there's like a subscription fee to pay to Google Home if you don't want to hear an ad every so often when you're trying to use it, or if you're playing music on it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't seem that far-fetched.
So do you have to deal with ads through that Google device right now?
No.
Okay. So I had a Echo Show. So it's the Echo, but with a screen on it. And one day, maybe about a year ago, they started showing ads on my Echo Show. And I have this in the kitchen. I looked into turning them off. I couldn't pay to get rid of the ads. I couldn't just disable them. Nothing. It's like, fuck this. I am not going to be advertised to in my damn kitchen. So we sold the thing and we no longer have an Echo. We have one, just a small voice only one in the bedroom, just so I can say, Alexa, it's bedtime, and it turns the lights off. Like, that's convenient. But I am not going to be advertised to on a screen in my home. That is ridiculous. And that might be something you start seeing with those types of Google devices.
I mean, similarly, the Kindle, you have to pay not to have ads on there.
Yeah. On the lock
Really?
screen. On the lock
screen. There's I heard of a workaround on TikTok and it did work for me. So I got them to take it off for free.
Oh.
But yeah, they like, if not, you have to pay.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. You can buy a Kindle, so you're paying for a piece of hardware
that you own.
but you have to pay an additional, is it a subscription fee?
No, you have to pay more. It's a one-time fee. You have to pay more for an ad-free Kindle, which is dumb because you're already buying the device anyway.
Yeah, I would have to guess that a lot of people pay that increased fee.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much it is, but
it's an extra $20.
Oh yeah, I bet a lot of people pay
on
that.
principle. Like, I think a lot of people are like, that's dumb. I'm not going to pay an extra $20. And then they regret it. And you can always pay after.
So
how sweet of Amazon.
Yeah. The ad only shows up when you lock it. So like, I don't consider that an intrusive ad. Like, when you lock, meaning turn off your Kindle, you're not looking at it. So, I mean, I guess it is a little disruptive, but it's not the worst type of ad. So that said, I did pay for the ad-free Kindle. So I have no room to talk.
No, that's good to know, because I'm looking at getting a Kindle and I had no idea that was even a thing. So that just gives me another thing to be irritated about with Google.
So you have a hack, Pam, that gets rid of the ads.
I was on TikTok one day. I'm on Kindle TikTok, and you didn't hear from me, but apparently you can just chat with Amazon and be like, listen, you're kind of showing some inappropriate stuff on here. Can we get these ads turned off?
Oh, clever.
Because I have kids around.
Clever.
And I'm worried about them seeing these really explicit covers. And they're like, sure, we can do that for you. We're so sorry about that.
Oh,
yeah.
That's amazing. Okay. Well, I'll keep that one in my back pocket.
Yeah. Try it, Laura. Order that
Yeah, just
Kindle
wait
and
like a
see what
couple
happens.
months and just be like,
Yeah.
hey.
Wait a couple months. No, do it now before they crack down on that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you should. Just like, I had no idea your ads were so explicit.
Yeah, my child saw this. Meanwhile, my
Exactly.
child is Canella.
Listen, Canella, I've seen Canella side eye.
My daughter saw a giant cock on my Kindle when I turned it off. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, I did not pay you guys to show me blue alien dick on Kindle.
I pay somebody else for that.
Turn it off.
All right. Well, we'll see what changes Google has to make. This is still going through court, and there might be some remedies, right? So we'll have to see.
Yep. We'll have to see what it is. The courts recommend Google do to remediate the situation.
All right.
They're not going to be happy about it.
Well, I have a bit of a rage of the week, and then we're going to talk about some recent news actually concerning the Olympics. I should have saved it. We'll talk about that in a moment. We will be right back. So something that's been on my mind recently, I admit I continue to look at Twitter, and when I'm on there, I see people complaining about Elon and continuing to use Twitter. So it got me wondering, where do we draw the line when it comes to truly canceling things in our own lives? It really frustrates me with Twitter because there is a completely acceptable real-time community over on Threads that people could move to. And I think the algorithm on Threads has seemed a lot better in the last month or two. It definitely wasn't perfect at the beginning, but it's gotten better, and they continue to add new features, and the community continues to grow. And creators or just even everyday users have had plenty of time to diversify the platforms that they're on, but they're still not doing it. And what this tells me is that people are just engagement whores over on Twitter. They can't quit the base that they've built up over there. So instead, they just stay there. But another thing that gets me is if you sign up for Threads, all your Instagram followers automatically move over to your account on Threads, which was a big sell for me, a big selling point for me. And I just find it embarrassing because you're not starting from scratch. Why are you on Twitter if you're also going to complain about Elon on there? I truly do not understand it. People love cancel culture and talking about how they're quitting certain things. Leave Twitter, mother effers. And like, I've brought this up to a couple people before. Somebody literally told me a week or two ago, oh, I don't even know how to use Threads or get started on Threads. And this is like a Twitter power user who also wants to cancel Elon. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what? You're just making excuses. You have no actual excuses. And Laura, I'm sorry to call you out, but I was disappointed because when the big Joe Biden news broke, you went to Twitter and not Threads. Why, girl? Go to Threads.
I mean, I guess that's just muscle memory. Like, if I have something I want to put out into the internet ether, it was always Twitter for me. And honestly, I don't keep social media up to date at all anymore. Y'all know this. I think it's like probably the bane of like Chloe's existence that I am super inactive on social. But every now and then I get a thought that I want to share. I will say that I shared a thought about James Cameron and D23 on Threads.
Ooh,
so
Threads exclusive.
I don't know if you saw it, but I was thinking of you when I posted it. I was like, hey, you know what? Andrew would appreciate it if I put this on Threads and not on Twitter.
Thank you. You were like, I know he's going to call me out in the next episode, so I need to fix things.
It's fine. I'm used to it. But I mean, I think we're all guilty of not being able to let things go sometimes, even when we know the thing is shitty.
Yeah. I just don't get, I truly, do you two see this too? Like, people complain about Elon on Twitter. It's not just me, right? So
no,
I don't
they
get
do.
it.
Yeah, I will say that like part of it is community. It depends. Like, I think, okay, like for example, I know this doesn't apply to everybody. Stan culture is still very much on Twitter. I think you see people having pop culture conversations on Threads, but the community is kind of like spread out for the most part, from what I can tell. But in terms of engagement, like if you're just looking to be an engagement whore, I feel like I get pretty good engagement on threads outside of my own circle of people who follow me. So like if like far reach is your game, then you're probably better off trying threads out. Because I feel like the people that interact with my stuff on there are not usually the people who follow me. It's usually people that like whose names I don't recognize. So
Yeah.
the algorithm is doing something.
Well, I think one example of surfacing your content is if you use Instagram, you'll see a little carousel that highlights some threads, including from your
Yeah.
friends. And I really like
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
And I also like that you can like share a thread to stories,
Yeah.
which I've only done a handful of times, but I do think that's a pretty neat feature.
Yeah, I've seen some people argue that, okay, I don't want to move to threads because I'm already on Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. So I don't want to like kind of invest in yet another Meta company when, of course, Meta isn't particularly great either. But I feel like Meta is the lesser of two evils here. So why not just leave and go all in on Meta? I know it's not a great solution, but it's what we got.
Yeah.
I just find everybody so hypocritical. I've been tempted to delete my Twitter, but to Laura's point about muscle memory, like, yeah, I've been on there since 2006, 2007, and I sure as shit can't let the Sims take away that username that I've had and endured so many comments from Sims users on.
Not without selling it for a pretty penny.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and trust me, I've tried. I told the Sims they can buy it from me, and they don't want to pay for it. Can you believe that?
Wow, how much would you charge them for it?
At this point, I don't know, $500. Is that asking too much? I feel like that's a good deal for the Sims.
I
They
think
just
that's
launched
not
a new
asking
expansion
enough.
pack. Yeah,
Yeah.
they have money.
Yeah, speaking of expansion packs, here's a tweet I got yesterday. Why isn't there a camping Sims 4 expansion at Sims? I don't know. I didn't make the game. I have no...
Ironically, that sounds very like on brand for them to ask you specifically about a camping expansion pack.
You're right. You're right. Didn't think about that. Yeah. So I'm willing to sell, but I'm not just going to give it up. And I don't want some random person to take that name. And I don't know. Maybe I should. I admit I repost things on Twitter because I see some funny stuff or some political stuff and I want other people to see it. So maybe in a way I am contributing, but I haven't been writing new hashtag content on there. So question, what have we truly canceled in our own lives due to something going down, you know, like an Elon or J.K. Rowling level type of events?
I was a really big fan of Chris Hardwick and really loved his podcast, his interview style. At the time I was living in LA and my friend's dad had the hookup at CBS. We would go to the Talking Dead, you know, fairly regularly and stuff that was like the Walking Dead after show he used to do. And I got really disenchanted by these sexual assault allegations that came out, which I think he's like technically been absolved of, but I don't know, just something about the way that he and his partner handled it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And I couldn't look at him the same way again. And I stopped listening. So yeah, I think that was like the big one for me at the time. I can't really recall another example, but.
So I feel weird admitting this, but I canceled Bud Light because of that whole Dylan Mulvaney backlash. And yes, I truly did cancel it in my own world because believe it or not, I, Andrew, of all people, did drink quite a bit of Bud Light, especially like a few years ago with an old friend group in California. Like I've done many a Bud Light keg stand. And even out here in Vegas, like I was choosing Bud Light. I usually liked Bud Light. But then when all that went down, I was just so disappointed in how they handled it. And I was like, oh, I do have other options out there when I'm looking for a beer. And I've been drinking Modelo or Corona primarily now. So arguably not as trashy as Bud Light, at least in my mind. I know, Laura, you consider Corona trashy.
It's not, I wouldn't say that it's trashy. There's a time and a place for it. And I just don't happen to think that is an anytime, anywhere kind of beer. That's like hot day on the beach, lime in the neck. Like, that's perfect. If I was going to a bar to order a beer, that would not be my order. No.
Okay, well, you don't want to know what I ordered over the weekend at a bar. So anyway, also
Wait, I thought you canceled Bud Light.
no. Oh, sorry, Corona. I meant
Oh,
Corona was
Corona.
the
Okay.
trashy one. I thought you didn't.
Yeah.
Didn't you? Yeah. Also, Ellen DeGeneres. I used to love her daytime talk show.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, I was watching that every day. And then all the stories came out about how bad of a person that she was. And I was like, you know what? There were too many. There comes a point where there's like too many stories, and it's like, wow, this person is truly awful. And then Louis C.K., like, I used to love him as a comedian, and he had a TV show a few years ago. I can't remember what it was. I feel like it was partly improv. And it was so good. But yeah, after all that went down with him, just done with him. How about you, Laura? What have you
Yeah, so speaking of comedians, Dave Chappelle is someone who I mean, was basically a fan of since I was a preteen. And when he really just got on uh, all of the anti-trans rhetoric, I think because it was the in thing for contrarian people in the spotlight to do at the time, there was like seemingly no reason for it. And the continued like doubling down and trying to make that like part of his mantle that he was like standing up to this woke mob just kind of soured my desire to watch any more of his comedy. I will say I do still enjoy revisiting old episodes of The Chappelle Show sometimes because some of those were very funny. And I think it is okay, personally, to still enjoy things that were made by problematic people if they were something that you really enjoyed beforehand. And as long as you can recognize that that person is problematic now, and I'm personally just not interested in seeing anything he does moving forward. Not that it impacts him in any way. It's not a real cancellation if, like, me being one person doesn't watch any more of his comedy specials. Someone else that I used to be a huge fan of that honestly, like, I wouldn't say that I've canceled him in my life. Bill Maher. I used to be Andrew, you know this.
Oh, I know.
I used to be
You got me
such a
into
big
Bill
Bill
Maher.
Maher fan.
Yeah.
I fucking loved Bill Maher. But over the last decade, it really feels like he's tried to adopt like the right-wing talking head model, but on the left side of politics. For some things, in other ways, on other topics, he's become bizarrely conservative, which I don't understand. And I think it just makes his humor honestly less creative and actually like less of a like gut punch of humor, if that makes sense. Like, he used to be able to speak from such a place of truth that would make you laugh, but it would simultaneously hurt.
Yeah.
And now it just hurts. It's
Yeah.
just not funny anymore.
Makes sense.
He has gotten worse to me over the last few years. I still find him pretty funny, and I admit I still watch his show. It's a Friday night topical news comedy show. So to me, he's still really good entertainment for a Friday night in front of the TV. But yeah, I found myself increasingly getting annoyed at some of the things that he says. That said, I sometimes want to hear some of those differing opinions that don't perfectly align with mine. And I think in many ways, he is still very much comfortably on the left. A lot of his more batshit comments are the ones that get viral attention these days. But some of the stuff we would wholeheartedly agree with don't get the attention anymore because they're not going to get all the attention on, they're not going to get all the backlash on social media. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Of course. I think it's also just he's always kind of been this way, but there's this like general air of superiority that he kind of leads with. And I think at a different time in his comedy career that worked. I think for the time that we're in now, it doesn't work, at least not as well for me as it used to. So I just, I don't like hate the guy or anything, but I don't prioritize keeping up with him.
Speaking of cancel culture, he's really annoying when he talks about cancel culture.
God.
So he's in Vegas 3 to 4 times a year, I think, performing his stand-up. I used to really want to go. I've never been. I now have no interest in going despite living here because I just know his stand-up is going to be bitching about cancel culture. And I don't want to hear that for an hour or however long the stand-up routine is.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with Chappelle because he spends a ton of time talking about cancel culture now, and it's like, yes,
right.
Please, famous person selling millions of dollars in shows for people to come watch you talk about how you're being canceled for an hour. Like, yes, please lecture me about how cancel culture works.
Right. And, he gets these Netflix specials, and Netflix is paying him millions of dollars for these specials.
Right. Like, you have not been deplatformed, sir.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up.
Same thing with Joe Rogan. He just had a live Netflix event. I didn't watch it. I would rather stab my eyes out. But, I mean, these people are still making tons of money because, as much as we love Netflix, we also have to admit that they are platforming people who probably should not be platformed, especially Joe Rogan.
It's not just Netflix doing that, unfortunately.
Yeah. But this is the reality. Like, try as we might to cancel certain names, and you can quit them yourself. And I won't judge you for trying to cancel anybody or canceling them in your own life. But there are still larger forces at play that are keeping them successful and well paid.
Yeah, well, that's like, I completely understand where people are coming from. If somebody's like, if you have a J.K. Rowling or if you have a Dave Chappelle or a Bill Maher, whatever, a lot of people come at that with the energy of, if we can convince enough people to stop engaging with these creators, comedians, what have you, then it'll bankrupt them and they'll be banished to the edges of time, and no one will ever hear from them again. Like, these people are so obnoxiously wealthy. There is nothing that you as an individual can do to cancel them. The best thing you can do is protect your own peace and say, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to engage with that person's content because I just have to protect my own sanity. That's really the best thing you can do.
And you can also,
you're not going to go post something. You're not going to go post a TikTok or a Twitter or a tweet, excuse me, a Twitter. I sound like a boomer right now.
Twitter.com.
Yeah, you're not going to post to Twitter and make people, but like, you're not going to convince large swaths of people that way. So best thing you can do is focus on you. And that's just good general advice.
Yeah. Well, and try to make an impact in your own ways that maybe counter what that person is doing, through volunteering, through donating, through supporting the good names who you love. It doesn't have to be all about cancel culture and armchair activism. Go out and do something about it in your own small way. Lots of people are. Speaking of canceling people, J.K. Rowling, she was in the news over the last couple of weeks because Imane Khelif, an Algerian boxer who had previously failed a mystery gender eligibility test at the 2023 World Boxing Championship, was allowed to compete in the women's boxing category at the Olympics. And she was allowed to compete in the Olympics because she met the International Olympic Committee's necessary criteria to do so. But Khelif's opponent, Italian boxer Angela Carini withdrew from their match after just 46 seconds, and critics were pointing to this quick surrender to call out how unfair the fight was. And many people on the right were complaining about this, about Imane being able to compete. They are purely guessing that Imane was not born a woman. J.K. Rowling criticized this decision to allow Khelif to compete, referring to her as a man on social media. And this was an outrageous suggestion because there is no evidence of this. And Rowling was simply making an assumption based on A, her appearance, and B, this mysterious eligibility test that Khelif had failed last year. And the IOC defended Khelif's eligibility, stating that all athletes competing in the women's category met their necessary criteria. Now, this this World Boxing Championship test, the president of this organization, Umar Kremlev, told the Russian news agency TASS it was a DNA test that showed Khelif had XY chromosomes. Khelif herself has never publicly claimed to be intersex. As for Kremlin, despite heading this organization, he is not an unbiased source of data. After he took the organization's helm in 2020, Kremlev installed the state-owned energy company Gazprom as its sole sponsor, and the IOC soon withdrew recognition from the IBA entirely, citing corruption concerns and potential match fixing. Kremlev has also been tied to Russian President Vladimir Putin and the far-right nationalist biker gang, the Night Wolves, the leader of which is also a close Putin ally, as Fortune reported. And thank you to them.us for a lot of the details here. So we have these two eligibility tests at odds here. One let her compete, the other didn't. The background of the organization of the one that didn't is sketchy at best.
It's just awful to see like this athlete and her family too have to go through this when people that go to the Olympics are training their whole lives to do that, and to have that ripped away over something like this. And I just keep thinking too, like, you know, my family is like big into boxing. I think a lot of people got really into boxing like the 80s and 90s and stuff like that. But that's something that like my family still enjoys watching. I've never seen anybody question a man's eligibility because they knock someone out in the first like minute of a boxing match. So why should you question a woman for having more skill?
Yeah, and to your point, Pam, Khelif has lost plenty of matches. She's on record as having lost a number of prior matches. So it's not as though she walks into the arena and, you know, knocks out her opponent within a minute every single time. It just seems like that was the case this time. And I also wanted to point out that I believe I read that the IBA made Khelif submit to this testing as a result of her beating a Russian boxer. So they were looking for a reason to invalidate her and take a win away from her. So it's just not a reputable organization. And we already know that misinformation comes out of all sorts of people and groups with ties to the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin. So it's really misguided for people to be taking a story that's basically just word of mouth at this point and running with it. It's really irresponsible. It legitimately puts people in danger when you do that too. I mean, especially someone who is receiving such a global profile because of being in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And also somebody who, by the way, is from a country that does not recognize trans rights.
Yes.
So think about how dangerous it is to imply that a person must be trans when you know the country that they're going back to and the attitudes that exist in that country towards queer people. Like, think about how much danger you're putting that person in. Think about how much danger you're putting them in if they ever, you know, in the future travel globally to participate in matches again. Just putting someone on global blast by calling them a gender that they have never identified with and that you have no evidence they actually are is fucking insane.
To your point, not to mention, where would they have been able to get the proper care to transition in the first place?
Yeah.
In a country that makes all of that illegal.
Right. You can't get the care that you need, and she could not legally transition on paper. There would be no documents available. So she couldn't change her passport and other documents from male to female under her own country's laws. Now, here's a bit of hope. I'm not getting myself too excited yet, but Khelif has filed a lawsuit in France over acts of aggravated cyber harassment, and Rowling and Musk are among those named in the lawsuit. That part came out today. Now, this might be wishful thinking, but as of this recording Tuesday night, JKR has been silent on Twitter since August 7th. So maybe this lawsuit is spooking her into shutting the hell up. Maybe her lawyers are advising that. Maybe Rowling is just on vacation on her yacht or just in a castle she rented. I don't know. But it is interesting timing. And I hope Khelif sues the hell out of them and takes a lot of money from Rowling, Musk, and whoever else she named in her lawsuit.
Yeah, the narrative is just going to be this trans man is suing a woman for free speech. Like, that is what J.K. Rowling's narrative is going to be. And it's fucking disgusting.
Well, and
because like, here's the thing, man, this is such a fucking slippery slope to say, yeah, that person's a man because I believe they look like a man.
Yeah.
If you want to open that can of worms, J.K. Rowling and anyone else who wants to take that approach to something like this, just bear in mind that the world is a wide, very diverse place with lots of people with different perspectives. And I don't think any of us would want to feel like it was acceptable for someone to look at us and say, I don't think you look like a woman, therefore you're a man.
Right. To feed my narrative that I've been bitching about for years on Twitter. What's also rich about this lawsuit is that Rowling has threatened legal action against many people on social media when they trash talk her. And now the tables have turned.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious because she threatens like literally no-name Twitter accounts with like 12 followers. She'll like threaten to sick her lawyers on them.
Yeah.
She's
wild.
Insane.
She needs a life.
Yeah, she does. But hey, can't sue me. I'm in America. I got free speech, bitch. I'm kidding. She would still try.
She'll tweet about you. Careful, I've been there. I've been threatened via Twitter.
Oh, when you got called wormtaily?
Yeah. Don't visit Hypable, #wormtaily. I don't want to brag, but that was the first public display of her being off her rocker. You can't go back any earlier than that tweet to point to a moment where you look at her and you're like, it's a little strange to call out a little website about mild spoilers.
Andrew, are you saying that you were the straw that broke the camel's back with J.K. Rowling?
Not necessarily. I'm just saying that is the first public piece of evidence that something was wrong. That's all I'm saying. When there's history books on this, that tweet is going to be chapter 1, or maybe the foreword. A foreword written by Andrew Sims. In the summer of 2016, something seemed off for the first time.
Muggles suck. A history.
Well, Pam, what's coming up in After Dark this week?
So we're going to go back to our friendship series, our ongoing friendship series, because I found this TikTok and the person posed a very interesting question, which was, what is a friendship lesson that you've had to learn the hard way as an adult? And I thought that we would have a lot to say about that. So we're going to unpack that in After Dark and get into our own examples. So come join us over there if you're a patron. It should be a fun discussion.
After Dark is part of Mega Millennial, which you get every week when you're a patron or Apple Podcast subscriber. Plus, it's ad-free. Visit patreon.com/millennial to pledge today. Spotify users will find a banner at the top of our show page, or Apple Podcast users can tap into the show and subscribe.
And this is the best time of year to become a patron because you will be able to receive the Millennial Word Cloud t-shirts. So pledge now before September 6th to receive this year's shirt. You just got to pledge at the Bay level or higher. And that's going to come up quick, so don't delay. Please, patreon.com/millennial. And your support makes this show possible. Time for some recommendations. I want to recommend the Celine Dion documentary called I Am Celine Dion on Amazon Prime. It was really good, an inside look at her life as she battles stiff person syndrome. You may have heard about her health struggles over the last few years, and the cameras go in her house, and there are some tough scenes to watch in this documentary, but it was really good and a great reminder of not only Celine's talent, but how much of a down-to-earth and funny person she is. I did not realize how funny she is. Also, it piqued my interest because I didn't realize she still actively lives in Las Vegas despite not performing here, at least not right now. So I thought that was pretty cool. I appreciated that. So definitely check it out. It can be a hard watch, but it's a really good watch too.
I'll definitely have to check that out. For something else that y'all should check out, Pam and I did a D23 recap and reaction video on the What the Hype YouTube. So you should definitely check that out. We talked about all of the Marvel and Pixar and Disney originals news that came out of D23 this last weekend. So to check that out, just look up What the Hype podcast on YouTube, and that'll be the most recent video we have up.
And I wanted to recommend the Halo Bolt. This is a portable car jump starter and also a power bank. I'm sure that we all grew up seeing like traditional jumper cables, and the tech for that has gotten a lot more sophisticated. This is really sleek. The box is very small, and you don't need to wait for someone else to come and help you jump your car if you find yourself stranded. I did not find myself stranded when my car did not start about a week ago, and I was able to jump my car on my own using this thing. I think they're about $100 you can get them on Amazon or from their website. And I just love that it's really small, so it's really easy to tuck away until you need it. And also the fact that it can double as a power bank is great too, because you can charge your, like your laptop, you can charge your phone probably 10, 20, 30 times over, because this thing packs a punch. So it's great if the power goes out too, but especially good if you need to jumpstart your car, like I said.
Yeah, that sounds like a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Pals, make sure you're following the show in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And we would appreciate a review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Or I heard recently that my favorite podcast app, which you all should be using, which is currently featuring What the Hype, by the way, they're adding a review system of their own where you can leave a review. So if you use Pocket Casts, review us in Pocket Casts too.
To stay in touch with us, email millennialshow@gmail.com or visit millennialshow.com. While there, you'll also find all the links to our various social media channels. So please do give us a follow. Spotify users can also leave feedback directly within an episode.
After Dark starts in a moment for patrons and Apple Podcast subscribers. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm Andrew. I am demure. I am mindful.
I'm Laura, and I'm tired all the time.
Laura hates being put on the spot at the end of these episodes.
I hate this.
She hates it so much. She is not demure.
No, I am not. I would not describe myself that way.
And I'm Pam. A lot.
Bye, everyone.